Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back to a world before modern toilets existed. A time when people had to survive without flushing bathrooms, soft toilet paper, or proper sewage systems, and honestly, the reality was far dirtier, smellier, and stranger than most of us could ever imagine. Tonight, we'll explore ancient cities, medieval castles, crowded villages, and royal palaces to discover how humans handled one of life's most unavoidable problems long before modern plumbing changed the world. So relax, close your eyes, and let the strange history of bathrooms gently lull you to sleep. Long before toilets existed, humans usually went outside in forests, fields, or rivers, and this worked fine when populations were tiny, but once cities became larger, the smell and disease quickly turned into massive problems. In ancient Mesopotamia, wealthy families had primitive toilets made from clay or stone, while ordinary people still relied on buckets or simple holes dug into the ground. In ancient Rome, sanitation became more advanced because the Romans built huge public latrines where dozens of people sat side by side without privacy while water flowed beneath them, carrying waste into sewer systems. The Romans even shared a sponge attached to a stick for cleaning after using the toilet, which sounds absolutely horrifying. Today, despite Roman engineering, the streets of many cities still smelled terrible because waste was often dumped outside homes. After the fall of Rome, sanitation in Europe became much worse, and medieval towns had almost no proper sewage systems. People emptied chamber pots directly into the streets, sometimes shouting warnings before throwing the contents from windows. Castles were not cleaner because many had tiny toilet rooms where waste dropped through shafts into pits below, and during hot weather, the smell became unbearable. Some workers, called gong farmers, cleaned cesspits during the night using buckets and shovels, and the dangerous fumes could even kill them. Many people rarely bathed and had little understanding of germs, so diseases spread rapidly through crowded cities. Even kings and queens lived surrounded by horrible smells because palaces like Versailles had surprisingly few toilets, and some nobles simply used corners or hallways when desperate. In London during the 1800s, raw sewage filled the River Thames, creating such a terrible smell that politicians struggled to work nearby during hot summers. Before toilet paper, people used leaves, moss, cloth, seashells, and even corn cobs for cleaning, while Romans reused communal sponges. Humans slowly realized better sanitation saved lives, and eventually, modern sewer systems transformed cities forever. Today, flushing a toilet feels completely normal, but for most of history, people survived in conditions that were unbelievably dirty and uncomfortable. And perhaps as you drift towards sleep tonight, you can feel grateful for something as simple as clean running water. As cities continued growing, the sanitation problem became impossible to ignore, and the streets of medieval Europe often turned into rivers of mud mixed with animal waste, rotten food, and human sewage. During rainy seasons, the filth spread everywhere, and terrible smells floated through towns day and night. Many houses kept chamber pots under beds because walking outside at night could be dangerous, especially in crowded cities with little lighting. In the morning, families simply dumped the contents outside, which meant the streets became increasingly disgusting. Children played near sewage animals, searched through garbage, and insects multiplied rapidly. In some places, pigs wandered freely through towns, eating waste from the streets, which sounds shocking today, but was considered normal centuries ago. Travelers visiting large cities often described the overpowering smell long before they even reached the gates. Some inns were so filthy that guests slept fully dressed to avoid touching dirty bedding and floors. To 18 night, the sounds of people emptying chamber pots echoed through narrow streets while rats searched for scraps in dark corners. Rats became one of the greatest dangers because they carried fleas spreading deadly diseases across Europe during outbreaks, like the Black Death. Inside castles, life was not much cleaner. Despite all the luxury and power, many castle toilets were built into thick stone walls and waste simply dropped downward into moats or pits below. When the wind blew in the wrong direction, horrible smells drifted back into living areas. Servants constantly cleaned, but without modern chemicals or plumbing, there was only so much they could do. During long winters, waste sometimes piled up because frozen ground made cleaning difficult. Some castle residents burned herbs, flowers, or incense to hide unpleasant odors, but this usually only mixed sweet smells with sewage, creating an even stranger atmosphere. On long journeys, travelers faced another problem because proper bathrooms almost never existed along roads. People relieved themselves behind bushes, forests, or roadside ditches while carrying small cloths or natural materials for cleaning. Stagecoach travelers endured terrible conditions during bad weather and crowded roads could smell awful after days of heavy travel. Sailors aboard ships suffered even more because toilets at sea were extremely primitive. Many ships had simple wooden seats hanging over the ocean called heads, and rough storms made using them incredibly dangerous. One wrong movement could send a sailor into freezing water below. Privacy barely existed, and strong smells filled the lower parts of ships, especially during long voyages lasting months. Despite all these unpleasant conditions, humans slowly searched for cleaner, safer solutions, and over time, inventors, engineers, and city planners began changing the world forever. One of the biggest turning points in sanitation history arrived during the 19th century when massive industrial cities became overcrowded with workers searching for jobs. Thousands of families lived packed together inside tiny apartments without proper sewage systems, and the situation quickly became dangerous. Waste leaked into drinking water, and deadly diseases like cholera spread through entire neighborhoods. Within days, many people still believed bad smells caused illness rather than bacteria, so they focused more on covering odors than cleaning water. Doctors struggled to understand why so many children became sick and died in crowded cities. The River Thames in London became so polluted with sewage that during hot summers, the smell drifted through the entire city. In 1858, the odor grew so unbearable that politicians inside Parliament reportedly soaked curtains in chemicals to survive the stench. This disaster became known as the Great Stink and finally forced leaders to improve sanitation. Engineers designed enormous underground sewer tunnels, carrying waste away from the city, and these systems transformed urban life forever. Similar projects slowly appeared across Europe and America, bringing cleaner streets, safer water, and fewer deadly outbreaks. For ordinary people, the invention of indoor plumbing completely changed daily routines. Before this, families carried heavy buckets of water by hand, heated water over fires, and emptied chamber pots manually every single day. Early flushing toilets were expensive, luxuries only wealthy households could afford, but eventually factories produced cheaper versions, allowing more families to install them. By the early 20th century, modern bathrooms slowly became normal in many homes, although rural areas often continued using outhouses for decades today. An outhouse was usually a tiny wooden structure built outside with a deep hole beneath it, and during winter, using one could become absolutely miserable. Freezing winds entered through cracks, insects filled the air during summer, and terrible smells lingered constantly. Some families tried reducing odors with lime ash or dirt, but conditions remained unpleasant, especially during hot weather. At night, many people feared walking outside alone to use the outhouse because darkness, animals, and bad weather made the trip uncomfortable. Children especially hated nighttime visits during storms when rain and cold winds turned simple bathroom trips into frightening experiences. Despite everything, humans adapted because they always do, and generation after generation survived conditions modern people would find almost impossible to tolerate. Today, bathrooms are among the cleanest rooms inside most homes, yet for thousands of years humans lived surrounded by waste, unpleasant smells, and dangerous disease. And perhaps while drifting peacefully towards sleep tonight, you can appreciate just how extraordinary modern plumbing truly is. Even after modern toilets became more common, many strange bathroom habits from the past continued for years in different parts of the world. Some families still preferred outdoor toilets because indoor plumbing seemed expensive, unreliable, or even unhealthy to older generations. In rural villages, people often shared a single outhouse with several families, and during busy mornings, long lines sometimes formed outside. Children rushed before school while adults carried buckets of water through muddy yards during cold winters. In some places, newspapers were cut into squares and hung beside toilets because proper toilet paper remained too expensive. For ordinary households, hotels, and public buildings slowly introduced cleaner bathrooms, but early plumbing systems often worked poorly, causing terrible smells and frequent leaks. Some pipes froze during winter, while others clogged constantly because engineers were still learning how to build reliable sewage systems. Cities also faced enormous challenges because underground tunnels needed constant maintenance. Workers spent long, exhausting hours beneath streets repairing pipes surrounded by darkness, rats, and dangerous gases. It was dirty, exhausting work, yet these hidden laborers helped create the cleaner, safer cities people enjoy today. During the 20th century, bathrooms became symbols of comfort and modern living. Advertisements proudly showed shiny white bathtubs, polished sinks, and flushing toilets, promising families healthier, happier lives. For the first time in history, millions of ordinary people could enjoy private bathrooms with running water, warm baths, and proper sanitation. Something once considered a luxury for kings slowly became normal for average households around the world, but even today, billions of people still lack safe toilets or clean sewage systems, and in some regions, families must walk long distances simply to find safe places for sanitation. History reminds us that something as simple as a toilet can completely change public health, comfort, and everyday life. The story of bathrooms may sound strange, funny, or even disgusting, but it also reveals how humans constantly searched for cleaner, safer ways to survive, from ancient Roman latrines to medieval cesspits, from royal palaces filled with perfume to crowded industrial cities drowning in sewage. Humanity slowly learned one important lesson: clean water and sanitation save lives. And now, as the world around you grows quieter and your eyes become heavier, perhaps you can drift peacefully into sleep, feeling grateful that, unlike people of the past, you probably do not need to empty a chamber pot before bed tonight. Public toilets also developed in unusual ways throughout history, and some early public bathrooms shocked travelers who had never seen them before. In ancient Rome, large communal latrines allowed dozens of strangers to sit together in long rows without walls or privacy while casually talking about politics, business, and daily life. To modern people, this sounds uncomfortable and embarrassing, but Romans considered it completely normal. Some public toilets even featured decorative marble seats, beautiful columns, and flowing water, showing how important sanitation had become in Roman culture. After the fall of Rome, many of these advanced systems disappeared, and Europe would not regain similar sanitation for centuries. During the Victorian era, people became strangely obsessed with manners and cleanliness, yet many homes still struggled with terrible smells. Wealthy families sometimes hid toilets behind furniture, curtains, or wooden cabinets because discussing bathrooms openly was considered impolite. Guests pretended bodily functions simply did not exist, even while chamber pots remained hidden beneath beds. Servants quietly handled the unpleasant cleaning, while upper class families focused on appearing elegant and refined. Some doctors even warned that too much bathing weakened the body, so certain people avoided washing regularly. Despite growing interest in hygiene, perfume industries became extremely successful, partly because cities and crowded homes often smelled awful. Strong floral perfumes mixed with smoked sewage, sweat, and horse manure, creating scents modern visitors would probably find overwhelming. Horses alone produced enormous amounts of waste every day in busy cities, and before automobiles, streets constantly needed cleaning. Workers shoveled manure for hours while rain transformed roads into thick, muddy rivers mixed with filth. During summer heat, insects filled the air and disease spread rapidly through crowded neighborhoods. In hospitals, conditions were often even worse. Before proper sanitation rules existed, doctors sometimes performed surgeries without washing hands because they did not yet understand germs. Medical tools were reused repeatedly, and hospitals carried strong smells of sickness, chemicals, and waste. Many patients feared hospitals because entering one often meant little chance of returning home alive. Only after scientists discovered bacteria did doctors finally begin washing hands, sterilizing equipment, and improving cleanliness. These simple changes saved millions of lives and completely transformed medicine. The history of toilets and sanitation may sound unpleasant, but it reveals how much human life has improved over time. For thousands of years, people survived conditions filled with terrible smells, dangerous disease, and almost no privacy, yet somehow humanity adapted, endured, and slowly built cleaner, safer worlds generation by generation. In many parts of the world, nighttime bathroom trips were among the most unpleasant parts of daily life. Before modern plumbing existed, people carried candles, lanterns, or oil lamps through dark hallways, muddy streets, or freezing yards just to reach an outhouse or shared toilet. During storms, the experience became even worse because strong winds, rain, and deep mud turned simple bathroom visits into exhausting journeys. Children often feared going outside alone after dark because stories about ghosts, spirits, thieves, and wild animals filled many cultures. Some families kept chamber pots beside their beds to avoid dangerous nighttime walks, but these pots created their own problems because by morning the smell inside small rooms could become overwhelming. In crowded homes, entire families sometimes slept in one room beside chamber pots filled overnight, which modern people would probably find unbearable. Rich households relied heavily on servants to clean these containers every day, and this unpleasant task usually belonged to the lowest ranking workers. Servants carried heavy buckets through halls and staircases while trying not to spill anything across expensive carpets or polished floors. In some royal palaces, hidden passages existed, partly so servants could remove waste without disturbing wealthy residents. Even so, terrible smells often spread through buildings no matter how much perfume burned in fireplaces or hallways. Some cities attempted creating laws about waste disposal, but enforcing them proved difficult. Many people ignored sanitation rules because survival, daily work, and food mattered more than cleanliness, especially among poorer communities. But as scientific knowledge improved, governments slowly understood that dirty water and sewage caused deadly outbreaks. Public health campaigns encouraged cleaner streets, safer wells, and improved plumbing systems, while newspapers warned citizens about the dangers of contaminated water. Over time, toilets became symbols of progress, comfort, and civilization itself. Modern bathrooms with hot water, bright lights, soft paper, and flushing systems would appear almost magical to most people from the past. Ancient Romans, medieval peasants, Victorian nobles, and sailors crossing dangerous oceans all lived with conditions far rougher than anything most modern people experience today. And perhaps as you lie comfortably listening to this strange, sleepy history, you can imagine how extraordinary even the simplest modern bathroom would seem to someone living hundreds of years ago, while the distant world of cesspits, chamber pots, and smoky medieval streets slowly fades into darkness and sleep. Although modern toilets solved many sanitation problems, people still carried old habits and superstitions from earlier centuries. Some believed certain smells protected against disease, while others thought opening windows at night allowed dangerous air to enter homes. During outbreaks of illness, families burned herbs, vinegar, or incense, hoping the smoke would keep sickness away, because they still did not fully understand bacteria and viruses. In crowded Neighborhoods' neighbors often blamed one another for bad smells, overflowing drains, or contaminated wells leading to arguments that sometimes lasted for years. City officials struggled constantly to keep rapidly growing populations healthy while workers cleaned, streets collected garbage and repaired damaged sewage, tunnels beneath busy roads, underground. Sewer systems became hidden worlds beneath cities where workers navigated narrow tunnels, surrounded by darkness, rats, insects, and rushing wastewater. Despite the danger, these systems represented one of humanity's greatest achievements because cleaner sanitation dramatically increased life expectancy and reduced deadly epidemics that once terrified entire populations. By the 20th century, bathrooms had changed from unpleasant necessities into places connected with comfort, relaxation, and privacy. People decorated bathrooms with mirrors, soft towels, polished sinks, and warm bathtubs, transforming spaces once associated only with dirt and disease into symbols of modern living. Advertisements proudly promised cleaner, healthier, happier homes through improved plumbing and sanitation, while companies competed to create softer toilet paper, brighter soap, and more luxurious bathrooms. Hot running water became one of the greatest comforts many families had ever experienced, especially during cold winters when earlier generations survived with little washing and freezing outdoor toilets. Today, most people rarely stop to think about the thousands of years humans spent struggling with waste, smells, disease, and primitive sanitation systems. Yet the history of toilets reveals how deeply everyday inventions can transform civilization itself. Something as simple as flushing water changed cities, medicine, public health, and ordinary human comfort forever. And now, as the world grows quieter around you and your thoughts begin to slow, perhaps you can drift peacefully toward sleep, leaving behind the strange, crowded streets of ancient cities, the smoky castles of medieval Europe, and the endless, unpleasant smells of the past while enjoying the quiet comfort of the modern world around you. Perhaps the strangest part of bathroom history is how quickly humans adapted to conditions that modern people would consider unbearable. After all, when everyone around you lives with the same smells, dirty streets, and primitive toilets, those conditions simply become normal life. Children born in crowded medieval towns grew up hearing carts rolling through muddy roads while animals wandered nearby and unpleasant odors filled the air almost constantly. For them, clean, silent bathrooms with bright lights and warm water would have seemed like impossible luxury from another world. In many homes, people used heavy curtains, carpets, and thick fabrics not only for decoration but also to trap cold air and hide unpleasant smells. Fireplaces burned day and night while smoke drifted through rooms, mixing with odors from cooking, animal sewage, and damp clothing, creating atmospheres difficult for modern minds to imagine. Even wealthy nobles, surrounded by gold, silver, and expensive paintings, still lived without many basic comforts people now take for granted. Grand feasts, servants carried enormous meals through crowded halls lit by candles, while hidden nearby chamber pots waited beneath beds and behind curtains. The contrast between luxury and poor sanitation existed almost everywhere throughout history. Science advanced during the 19th and 20th Centuries public attitudes slowly changed. People began understanding that invisible germs spread, disease, and suddenly cleanliness became more important than ever before. Cities introduced stricter sanitation. Law schools taught hygiene, and governments invested huge amounts of money building cleaner water systems, safer sewage, tunnels, and modern plumbing networks. Engineers who designed underground sewer systems became unlikely heroes because their work quietly saved millions of lives without most citizens ever seeing it beneath their feet. Modern toilets may seem ordinary today, but they represent centuries of invention, labor, and human determination to create healthier lives. From ancient stone latrines to wooden outhouses, from shared Roman sponges to soft modern toilet paper, the story of sanitation reveals how civilization itself slowly evolved through countless small improvements. And now, as your body relaxes deeper into comfort and the quiet night surrounds you, perhaps these distant images of smoky villages, medieval castles, crowded Roman bathhouses, and muddy Victorian streets can slowly fade away, allowing your mind to wander peacefully into sleep, far away from the strange, unpleasant world before modern toilets existed. And so the long history of toilets is really the history of humanity, learning slowly, painfully, and sometimes very strangely how to live together inside growing cities for thousands of years. People accepted overflowing streets, terrible smells, contaminated water, and dangerous disease simply because no better systems existed. Generations lived entire lives without ever experiencing the comfort of private bathrooms, clean running water, or reliable sewage systems that modern people use every single day without thinking about it. Ancient towns, the smell of waste mixed with smoke from fires, animal manure, wet clothing, and crowded markets, creating thick, heavy air that travelers often remembered for the rest of their lives. Some visitors described cities as places where every street carried different odors from food, animals, sewage, and industry blending together beneath narrow buildings and dark alleyways. Night, the sounds of footsteps, carts, barking dogs, and distant voices echoed beside the unpleasant smell, drifting from gutters and cesspits beneath windows. Yet, despite all this, people still laughed, worked, married, celebrated festivals, and built entire civilizations, proving how adaptable humans truly are. The arrival of modern sanitation quietly changed daily life more than many famous wars, kings, or inventions, because clean water and proper toilets dramatically reduced disease and made cities safer, healthier, and more comfortable for millions of ordinary people. Children survived illnesses that once killed entire families, and life expectancy slowly increased as sanitation improved around the world. Today, bathrooms are usually among the cleanest, quietest places inside a home, but centuries ago they were often dark, uncomfortable, dangerous, and deeply unpleasant places associated with disease, hard labor, and constant bad smells. And perhaps, as you settle deeper beneath your blankets listening to this sleepy journey through history, you can appreciate how extraordinary simple modern comforts really are, because somewhere in the distant past, a tired medieval worker carrying a heavy chamber pot through cold, dark streets could never have imagined the peaceful, quiet world surrounding you tonight while sleep slowly begins to carry you away. Before modern plumbing became common, people also worried constantly about water itself because clean water was difficult to find in crowded towns and cities. Wells often became contaminated by nearby sewage pits, and rivers served as both drinking water sources and dumping grounds for waste, garbage, and dead animals. During hot summers, the smell rising from polluted water could become unbearable, while deadly diseases spread silently through entire communities. Many families had no idea the water they drank every day carried invisible bacteria capable of causing terrible sickness. Some people believed illness came from bad air, curses, or punishment rather than contaminated water. So real solutions arrived very slowly. Inside poor neighborhoods, several families sometimes shared tiny courtyards with only one outhouse, forcing long waits, especially during mornings and evenings. The ground around these toilets often became muddy, wet, and foul, smelling, attracting insects and rats. Children carried buckets of water while adults tried desperately to keep living spaces clean despite impossible conditions. During winter, frozen pipes and icy winds turned bathroom trips into miserable experiences, while summer heat made smells stronger than ever. In wealthier homes, indoor plumbing slowly became fashionable, and rich families proudly showed guests their modern bathrooms, complete with bathtubs, mirrors, and flushing toilets. Some early bathrooms even included decorative tiles, polished metal fixtures, and elegant painted walls, transforming spaces once hidden away into symbols of luxury and progress. Hot baths, which had once required enormous effort, suddenly became much easier, and people gradually began bathing more regularly than earlier generations. Doctors, teachers, and newspapers encouraged cleanliness, explaining that washing hands, bathing regularly, and using proper toilets helped prevent disease. These ideas slowly changed society forever. Children learned hygiene habits in schools, while governments invested huge amounts of money building cleaner, safer infrastructure beneath expanding cities. Although modern bathrooms now seem ordinary, they are actually the result of centuries of struggle, invention, engineering, and human survival, stretching all the way back to ancient civilizations. And perhaps as your eyes grow heavier and your breathing slower, you can let the strange sounds and smells of the ancient world fade quietly away, while the comfort of clean water, warm rooms, and peaceful modern life gently carries you towards sleep. Even with all the improvements brought by modern sanitation, the memory of older ways of life remains surprisingly close for many families well into the 20th century. In small villages, elderly people still remembered carrying water from wells every morning, washing clothes by rivers, and walking through snow, rain, or darkness just to reach outdoor toilets. Some grandparents told stories about freezing winter nights when strong winds blew through wooden outhouses, while lanterns flickered in the cold darkness. Children dreaded those nighttime trips, especially when storms rattled rooftops and strange sounds echoed through empty streets or forests nearby. For countless generations, something as simple as using the bathroom required effort, planning, and sometimes real courage. Travelers crossing deserts, mountains, or oceans faced even harder conditions because proper sanitation disappeared. completely during long journeys. Explorers, sailors, soldiers, and merchants often survived with almost no privacy while enduring terrible smells and uncomfortable conditions for weeks or months at a time. On crowded ships, sailors slept beside barrels, ropes, animals, and waste, while storms tossed the vessel through freezing waves. Many became sick from dirty water, spoiled food, and poor hygiene, yet life aboard ships continued because there were few alternatives available at the time. In military camps, sanitation problems frequently caused more deaths than battles themselves because contaminated water and disease spread rapidly among exhausted soldiers living close together. Commanders slowly learned that clean camps, safe drinking water, and proper waste disposal were just as important as weapons and supplies. Hospitals, prisons, factories, and schools also changed dramatically once governments realized sanitation protected entire populations from deadly epidemics. The invention of modern sewer systems may not sound exciting compared to famous kings' battles or discoveries, yet these hidden tunnels beneath cities quietly transformed human civilization more than most people realize. They removed dangerous waste, carried away polluted water, and made crowded urban life possible for millions of people. Without modern sanitation, many of today's enormous cities simply could not exist because disease would spread far too quickly through such massive populations. Today, people complain when a bathroom smells slightly unpleasant or when hot water disappears for a few minutes, but earlier generations survived conditions almost impossible for modern minds to imagine. They lived surrounded by mud, smoke, sewage, insects, and sickness, while still finding ways to laugh, celebrate, raise families, and dream about better futures. Perhaps that is one of the most fascinating parts of history, because humans continue adapting, improving, and rebuilding the world generation after generation. No matter how difficult life becomes, there is also something strangely comforting about realizing how far humanity has come, because for most of history, daily life involved constant discomfort that modern people rarely even think about. Today, simple tasks like washing hands, taking a warm bath, finding clean water, or using a private toilet once required enormous effort, and many people spent their entire lives without experiencing these basic comforts. In ancient villages, mornings often began before sunrise as families carried buckets from wells, chopped wood for fires, and cleaned waste from around homes. Before the day's work even started, the smell of smoke, damp earth, animals, and sewage lingered almost everywhere, especially in crowded settlements where narrow streets trapped odors between buildings. During rainy seasons, roads transformed into deep mud mixed with garbage and waste, while during dry summers, dust and unpleasant smells drifted through the hot air endlessly. Merchants, travelers, and farmers accepted these conditions as completely normal because there was simply no alternative available at the time. Inside busy medieval cities, life could feel overwhelming to the senses. Bells rang from churches, street vendors shouted prices, horses pulled heavy carts over stone roads, and smoke floated from hundreds of chimneys above crowded rooftops. Beneath all these sounds, another reality existed, quietly hidden in alleyways, gutters, cesspits, and overflowing drains where workers struggled constantly to keep cities functioning. Many People spent their entire working lives carrying waste, cleaning streets, digging sewer trenches, or emptying chamber pots, yet history rarely remembers their names even though their labor protected countless lives. As science slowly improved, humanity finally began understanding the connection between sanitation and disease. Doctors discovered that invisible bacteria spread illness through dirty water, contaminated food, and poor hygiene. This knowledge changed everything. Cities introduced cleaner water systems, public baths, underground sewage, tunnels, and stricter sanitation laws, transforming daily life forever. The difference became astonishing because places once filled with deadly outbreaks gradually became healthier, safer, and far more comfortable. For ordinary families, modern bathrooms may seem simple, ordinary, and even boring, but behind every sink, pipe, drain, and flushing toilet stands thousands of years of human struggle, invention, and survival, stretching back across ancient civilizations forgotten, villages, royal palaces crowded, factories, and dangerous industrial cities. And perhaps while your breathing slows and the quiet darkness around you grows softer, you can appreciate how extraordinary these everyday comforts truly are before letting the distant world of muddy roads, smoky castles, crowded Roman toilets, and endless chamber pots slowly disappear into peaceful sleep. Perhaps one day future generations will look back at modern life with the same amazement people today feel when hearing about medieval castles or ancient Roman toilets. They may wonder how humans once lived with plastic waste, polluted air, crowded cities, and noisy streets just as modern. People wonder how earlier civilizations survived without clean plumbing and sanitation. History constantly reminds us that what feels normal in one century can appear shocking, strange, or uncomfortable in another. For thousands of years, people adapted to conditions filled with unpleasant smells, dangerous disease, and exhausting daily labor because they had no other choice. And yet somehow, humanity continued building cities, creating art, raising families, and dreaming about the future. In many ways, the history of toilets is also the history of human resilience because every improvement in sanitation came from people refusing to accept suffering as permanent. Engineers, workers, inventors, doctors, and ordinary laborers slowly transformed the world piece by piece, often without receiving much recognition for their efforts. Beneath nearly every modern city, hidden tunnels, pipes, pumps, and treatment systems now work silently every hour of the day, carrying away waste and delivering clean water to millions of homes. Most people never see these systems and rarely think about them unless something breaks, yet modern civilization depends on them completely. Without sanitation, even the most advanced cities would quickly become dangerous, unhealthy places, much like overcrowded towns from centuries ago. The strange journey from ancient cesspits to modern bathrooms took thousands of years and involved countless experiments, failures, and inventions along the way. Some ideas worked surprisingly well, while others sound almost unbelievable today, like shared Roman sponges, perfume used to hide sewage smells, or nobles hiding toilets behind elegant furniture. But each generation slowly added something new, improving life little by little until eventually bathrooms transformed from filthy, dangerous spaces into quiet places of comfort, cleanliness, and privacy. And now, as this sleepy journey through history gently comes to an end, perhaps, you can let your thoughts drift away from the muddy streets of the past, the smoky air of crowded villages, the freezing wooden outhouses, and the endless struggle for clean water, while the comfort of the modern world surrounds you softly and peacefully, carrying you deeper and deeper into sleep. And perhaps while you're breathing slows and the quiet darkness around you grows softer, you can appreciate how extraordinary these everyday comforts truly are before letting the distant world of muddy roads, smoky castles, crowded Roman toilets, and endless chamber pots slowly disappear into peaceful sleep. And maybe the most fascinating part of all is that throughout history, people rarely stop to question the world around them, because every generation accepts its own routines as normal. A medieval farmer waking before sunrise to walk through muddy streets beside overflowing gutters probably never imagined a future where clean water flowed instantly from walls and toilets flushed waste away with the push of a button, just as ancient Romans sitting together in giant public latrines likely believed their civilization had already achieved the height of comfort and engineering. For each generation, daily life simply felt ordinary, even when conditions were dirty, exhausting, or deeply uncomfortable by modern standards. This is one reason history can feel so strange, because it reminds us how flexible human beings truly are. People can adapt to freezing winters, crowded cities, terrible smells, hard labor, and difficult living conditions far more than most modern minds expect. That I in old towns, bakers prepared bread beside smoky ovens, while nearby blacksmiths hammered metal into tools, horses pulled wagons through muddy roads, and children ran across streets filled with animals, garbage, and sewage. Life was noisy, crowded, and often unpleasant. Yet people still found moments of happiness, friendship, music, celebration, and rest. In the evenings, families gathered around fires, candles, or oil lamps, sharing stories, while outside cold winds carried the smells of smoke, rain, animals, and distant city streets through the darkness. The world before modern sanitation was harsh, but it was also deeply human, filled with ordinary people simply trying to survive another day as best they could. As centuries passed, inventions slowly transformed these lives piece by piece. First came better wells, then underground sewers, cleaner water systems, indoor plumbing, safer hospitals, and modern bathrooms. Each improvement seemed small at first, but together they completely reshaped civilization, reducing disease, increasing comfort, and allowing cities to grow larger than ever before. Today, most people can wake up, turn a faucet, and instantly receive clean water without ever thinking about the countless generations who struggled daily just to avoid sickness from contaminated wells or filthy streets. And perhaps tonight, as silence slowly fills the room around you and your thoughts drift further away, you can appreciate these quiet, modern comforts a little more, while the distant sounds of ancient cities, medieval castles, crowded marketplaces, and creaking wooden outhouses slowly fade into darkness, leaving only calm, peaceful sleep behind. As the modern world continued changing during the 20th century, bathrooms slowly became places connected not only with cleanliness, but also with privacy, peace, and personal comfort. 4. Most of history, privacy barely existed, especially among poorer families where many people slept together in small, crowded rooms and shared the same washing areas, chamber pots, or outdoor toilets. Simple moments alone were rare, which makes the idea of a quiet, warm bathroom seem surprisingly luxurious when viewed through the eyes of the past. Diane, ancient cities and medieval villages life constantly surrounded people with noise, smells, and activity from sunrise until late into the night. Market sellers shouted across crowded streets, horses rattled over stone roads, church bells echoed through towns, and smoke drifted endlessly from fireplaces, workshops, and kitchens. There was almost always another person nearby, another task waiting to be completed, or another unpleasant smell carried through the air from nearby drains, animals, or waste pits. Yet over time, the bathroom slowly transformed into one of the few places where ordinary people could close a door, separate themselves from the outside world, and enjoy a few moments of silence and comfort. This idea would have seemed extraordinary to countless generations before modern plumbing existed. In many old homes, bathing itself was difficult, exhausting work. Water needed to be carried manually from wells, rivers, or pumps, then heated over fires before finally being poured into tubs. Many families reused the same bath water, one after another, beginning with parents, then children, and sometimes ending with the youngest members of the household, washing in water that had already become dark with dirt and soap. Some people bathed only occasionally, especially during winter, because heating enough water required huge amounts of effort, fuel, and time. Clothing also absorbed smells easily because smoke from fireplaces filled homes constantly, and without modern washing machines, cleaning fabrics took enormous physical labor. Women and servants often spent entire days scrubbing heavy clothes by hand beside rivers or large boiling pots, while cold weather made the work even harder. Inside industrial cities, factories covered buildings with soot, turning walls, streets, and even faces dark with smoke. By the end of each day, workers returned home exhausted after long hours surrounded by heat, machinery, dust, and noise, often sharing tiny apartments with large families and limited sanitation. The arrival of reliable indoor plumbing transformed these lives more than almost any luxury item ever could, because clean water, hot baths, and safe toilets directly improved health, comfort, dignity, and everyday survival. Hospitals became safer, children lived longer, and cities no longer suffered constant deadly outbreaks on the same scale as earlier centuries. If someone from the ancient world could suddenly visit a modern home today, they would probably be amazed, not by televisions, phones, or computers, but by simple everyday comforts. People now completely ignore the ability to walk into a clean, quiet bathroom at any hour of the day or night, turn a handle, and instantly receive fresh water. Would seem almost magical to someone who spent their life carrying heavy buckets from distant wells or rivers. The idea that waste could disappear immediately through hidden pipes without terrible smells, insects, or dangerous disease would have sounded impossible for most of human history. For ancient people, sanitation was not something hidden quietly behind walls and underground tunnels. It was visible everywhere in the streets beside homes, near marketplaces, and around crowded cities where daily life mixed constantly with mud, smoke, animals, and waste. Medieval towns, especially after heavy rain, roads often became thick, rivers of mud mixed with horse manure, garbage, and sewage, while people carefully stepped across stones trying to keep clothing clean. Children ran through the chaos. Merchants shouted from wooden stalls, and workers pushed carts through narrow streets filled with smells modern visitors would likely find unbearable. Yet, despite these conditions, people still built families, friendships, traditions, music, art, and entire civilizations, proving again and again how adaptable human beings can be. Some of the strangest sanitation traditions in history also reveal how creative people became when solving problems with limited technology. In certain regions, people burned herbs, flowers, or perfumes not because they enjoyed pleasant scents, but because they believed strong smells protected against sickness. Doctors during earlier centuries often wore masks filled with aromatic plants while treating patients, believing bad air itself caused disease. Rich nobles carried scented cloths or small perfume containers during walks through crowded cities, trying to avoid overwhelming odors from streets, canals, and animals. Before modern toilets, some communities carefully organized waste collection systems where workers transported sewage outside city walls, while farmers later used it as fertilizer for crops. Although unpleasant, these systems sometimes worked surprisingly well and helped growing populations survive long before modern plumbing existed. Public bathhouses also played important roles in many civilizations. Ancient Romans famously built enormous bath complexes where people gathered not only to wash but also to relax, exercise, discuss politics, and socialize for hours. Some bathhouses included heated floors, warm pools, libraries, gardens, and massage rooms, showing how advanced Roman engineering truly became before many of these systems disappeared after the empire declined. Even today, traces of the old world still survive in certain places, small villages, remote cabins, and countryside. Homes sometimes continue using outdoor toilets, much like people did generations ago. That on cold winter mornings, the experience can still feel uncomfortable, reminding people how difficult daily life once was before modern plumbing became common everywhere. In some historic cities, ancient sewer tunnels still exist beneath busy modern streets, hidden quietly below restaurants, shops, and crowded sidewalks where millions of people walk every day without realizing centuries of history remain under their feet. Archaeologists studying old castles, villages, and Roman ruins often discover ancient toilets, drainage systems, and waste pits, which surprisingly reveal a great deal about how ordinary people lived, ate, worked, and survived long ago. Something as simple as an old sewer can tell historians what food people consumed, what diseases existed, and how crowded a city once became. The history of toilets may seem funny, strange, or even disgusting at first, but it also tells a deeper story about human survival, adaptation, and progress, because every cleaner street, safer water system, and better bathroom represented another small step toward healthier lives. And perhaps as your thoughts slowly drift further away tonight, you can leave behind the smoky air, crowded streets, and unpleasant Smells of the ancient world while quiet modern. Comfort gently carries you into peaceful, restful sleep. And perhaps the next time you hear water quietly swirling down a drain or the soft sound of rain against the window at night, you might remember that for most of human history, such simple comfort did not exist. Countless generations lived with hard, labor heavy buckets freezing, outdoor toilets and streets filled with smoke, mud, and sewage while still continuing forward day after day, building homes, raising children, and dreaming of better futures. Human history is often remembered through kings, battles, and famous discoveries, yet sometimes the greatest changes came from quieter inventions hidden beneath everyday life, like clean water underground pipes and safe sanitation systems that allowed millions of ordinary people to live healthier, longer, and more peaceful lives. And now, as this strange, sleepy journey finally fades into silence, perhaps your mind can drift completely away from the ancient world, leaving behind the crowded Roman latrines, the dark medieval alleys, the smoky Victorian cities, and the lonely wooden outhouses, while the calm, quiet comfort of the modern night gently carries you into deep, restful sleep. Far away in the future, people may look back at modern life the same way we look back at the strange, uncomfortable world of the past. They may wonder how humans once lived surrounded by noisy traffic, crowded cities, pollution, and endless stress, just as modern people wonder how medieval families survived beside overflowing cesspits and dirty streets. History has a way of making every generation seem unusual after enough time passes, yet each generation simply lives the only world it knows. Perhaps that is why studying everyday history feels so fascinating, because it reminds us that ordinary routines, simple habits, and quiet inventions can shape civilization just as much as wars or kings ever could. From ancient stone latrines to hidden underground sewer tunnels, humanity slowly transformed daily life, step by step across thousands of years. And now, as the night grows softer and more peaceful around you, perhaps there is nothing left to do except let your thoughts drift quietly away from the ancient world, while sleep slowly, gently carries you into dreams. There is something almost peaceful about imagining how different the world once felt before modern technology filled every moment with noise and speed. Despite all the discomfort people endured centuries ago, nights in ancient villages and medieval towns were often far darker and quieter than modern cities. After fires burned low and candles disappeared behind wooden shutters, the sounds of distant footsteps, horses creaking, carts barking, dogs, and cold wind moving through narrow streets echoed beneath the night sky, while most families slept close together beside fading fireplaces. Inside small homes, chamber pots rested quietly beneath beds, waiting for morning, while outside rainwater slowly carried mud, waste, and straw through dark alleyways lit only by weak lantern light. For many people, life moved according to seasons, weather, daylight, and survival itself, rather than clocks, schedules, or machines. Even though sanitation conditions were often terrible, daily life also carried a slower rhythm that modern people rarely experience anymore. In the countryside, before indoor plumbing, families began each morning with long routines: carrying water, feeding animals, cleaning tools, washing clothes, and preparing fires before breakfast could even begin. Children learned hard work very young because survival depended on everyone helping with daily tasks. Some walked long distances through snow, mud, or heavy rain simply to fetch clean water from wells or streams, while others spent hours cleaning homes. Without modern soaps, chemicals, or machines, the amount of physical labor required for ordinary life would probably exhaust most modern people within days. Yet generation after generation, humans adapted because they knew no other way of living. At the same time, wealthy nobles, kings, and aristocrats often surrounded themselves with luxury. Beautiful paintings, golden decorations, soft fabrics, and enormous palaces, while still lacking basic sanitation. Modern people take completely for granted. Some royal bedrooms contained hidden toilets behind curtains or inside wooden cabinets, while servants hurried quietly through hallways carrying away waste before guests noticed unpleasant smells. Expensive perfumes, flowers, incense, and candles attempted to disguise odors, but beneath all the elegance, the reality of pre-modern sanitation still remained impossible to escape completely. Perhaps that contrast is one of the strangest things about history, because even the richest, most powerful people in the world still faced many of the same uncomfortable problems as ordinary citizens before modern plumbing finally changed everything. As science, engineering, and medicine improved over centuries, humanity slowly escaped conditions that had once seemed unavoidable. Clean drinking water, proper sewage systems, public hygiene, and indoor plumbing transformed cities more quietly than armies or revolutions ever could. Yet their impact reached nearly every human life. Today, millions of people wake each morning, use clean bathrooms, shower with hot water, and drink safely from faucets without ever stopping to think about the thousands of years humans struggled desperately for these simple comforts. And now, as the quiet darkness settles more deeply around you, perhaps you can leave behind the distant world of smoky villages, muddy roads, crowded castles, ancient bathhouses, and endless chamber pots, while your thoughts become softer, heavier, and calmer, drifting slowly toward peaceful sleep. And perhaps the greatest lesson hidden inside this strange history is how easily humans become accustomed to the world around them. People who lived centuries ago accepted cold nights, smoky homes, dirty streets, and primitive toilets as completely ordinary because they had never known anything different. In the same way, modern people rarely stop to appreciate the quiet miracle of clean water, warm showers, and private bathrooms available within a few simple steps from their beds. History gently reminds us that comfort itself is something humanity slowly built across thousands of years through patience, hard work, invention, and survival. And now, as the final sounds of the ancient world fade softly into the distance, perhaps your thoughts can finally grow quiet, still, and heavy, while peaceful sleep slowly carries you away into the calm darkness of the night. Outside, the modern world continues, moving quickly with bright lights, busy roads, and endless noise. Yet somewhere deep beneath every city, hidden tunnels still carry water and waste, just as ancient humans once dreamed possible. As sleep slowly approaches, perhaps it becomes easier to imagine the countless generations of ordinary people who once lived in worlds completely different from our own worlds where nights were darker winters, felt colder, and even the simplest daily tasks demanded effort, patience, and endurance to eye in ancient towns before. Streetlights existed darkness, covered everything after sunset except for the weak glow of candles, fireplaces, and oil lamps. Flickering behind windows, people moved carefully through narrow, muddy streets, listening to distant footsteps, creaking wagons, barking dogs, and the sound of rainwater dripping from rooftops into filthy gutters below. The smell of smoke mixed constantly with sewage, wet straw, horse manure, and damp earth, creating an atmosphere modern visitors would probably find overwhelming within minutes, yet for people living at the time, these smells simply belonged to everyday life. Children grew up surrounded by them, workers returned home exhausted beside them, and travelers carried memories of them from city to city, across entire continents. Inside home's life was equally difficult. By modern standards, many families slept several people to a room because houses were small, expensive, and poorly heated during winter. Chamber pots rested beneath beds, waiting silently through the night, while heavy curtains, blankets, and rugs tried unsuccessfully to keep out freezing air from outside. Every morning before sunrise, someone needed to empty waste, fetch water, light fires, prepare food, and begin another long day of physical labor without machines, electricity, or modern convenience. The amount of effort required simply to survive each week was enormous, and yet, despite all this, people still found moments of happiness, celebration, laughter, music, and love, which perhaps says something remarkable about human nature itself. History often focuses on emperors, wars, and famous discoveries, but ordinary life for ordinary people was usually shaped far more by practical inventions like cleaner water, better drainage, safer food, and reliable sanitation than by political events alone. When engineers finally built modern sewer systems beneath growing industrial cities, they quietly changed the future of humanity forever, even if few people at the time fully understood how important these hidden tunnels would become. Disease outbreaks slowly decreased. Children survived illnesses that once killed entire neighborhoods, and crowded cities became safer places to live because waste no longer remained sitting openly beside homes and marketplaces. The transformation happened gradually over generations until eventually private bathrooms, flushing toilets, and hot running water became so common many people stopped thinking about them entirely. Yet, beneath every modern street, these systems continue working endlessly day and night, carrying away the problems humans struggled with for thousands of years, long before modern cities filled the world with electric lights, moving cars, and endless noise. The rhythm of human life depended almost entirely on daylight, weather, and survival itself. When the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, ancient towns and villages slowly faded into darkness, broken only by candles, fireplaces, lanterns, and the pale glow of the moon. Above narrow streets, people locked wooden doors, closed heavy shutters, and gathered close to fires while cold winds moved through empty roads, carrying the smells of smoke, damp earth, animals, and distant sewage pits across sleeping neighborhoods. Without modern plumbing, nighttime remained especially uncomfortable for many families because even Something as simple as using the bathroom could become unpleasant, exhausting, or frightening. Children often feared walking outside after dark toward freezing outhouses, while adults relied on chamber pots kept beside beds to avoid dangerous nighttime journeys through rain, mud, or snow. In crowded homes, several people shared tiny sleeping spaces with little privacy, and by morning the air inside small rooms could feel heavy with smoke, moisture, and unpleasant smells. Yet these conditions remained normal for generation after generation because no better alternative existed for most ordinary people. Inside medieval cities, life became even harsher during periods of rapid population growth. Narrow streets overflowed with workers, merchants, animals, carts, and waste, while rivers serving as drinking water sources also carried sewage, garbage, and industrial pollution downstream. The sound of blacksmiths hammering, metal horses pulling, wagons, market sellers shouting, prices, and church bells echoing through crowded streets created a constant atmosphere of movement and noise beneath which another hidden world quietly existed. Workers cleaning gutters, emptying cesspits, repairing drains, and hauling away waste in difficult, dangerous conditions. History rarely remembers these laborers by name, even though entire cities depended on their exhausting work every single day. Some cleaned public latrines while others climbed into underground tunnels filled with toxic fumes, rats, insects, and sewage to repair damaged sewer systems beneath busy streets. It was filthy, exhausting labor. Yet, without these forgotten workers, urban civilization itself could not survive for very long. As centuries passed, scientific discoveries slowly transformed humanity's understanding of disease, cleanliness, and public health. Before modern germ theory, many people believed sickness came from bad smells, curses, or poisonous air rather than invisible bacteria spreading through contaminated water and poor sanitation. This misunderstanding delayed progress for generations, while deadly outbreaks repeatedly swept through crowded populations. The effects were extraordinary, and so our long, quiet journey through the strange history of life before modern toilets slowly comes to an end. From ancient Roman latrines to freezing wooden outhouses, from smoky medieval streets to crowded industrial cities, humanity spent thousands of years struggling with problems most people today rarely even think about. Generation after generation, ordinary people carried water, cleaned waste, survived terrible smells, and adapted to difficult conditions simply because no easier world yet existed. But through patience, invention, hard work, and endless human determination, civilization slowly changed. Hidden beneath modern streets, sewer tunnels now carry away the hardships that once filled entire cities, while clean water flows effortlessly into homes around the world. What feels ordinary today would have seemed almost magical to countless people from the past. Perhaps that is the quiet beauty hidden inside everyday history, because it reminds us that even the smallest comforts, warm water, clean rooms, peaceful privacy, and a simple flushing toilet, are the result of centuries of human effort, survival, and progress. And now, as the ancient world finally fades into silence, perhaps you can let go of the muddy roads, crowded castles, smoky villages, and distant echoes of forgotten cities, while the calm darkness of the night gently surrounds you, carrying your thoughts softly, peacefully, and slowly into deep, restful sleep.